Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Michael J. Long. He is here to celebrate 3 lines and a circle. Hey, Michael, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Jed, it's great to be with you. I hear you're in Boston. It's a great city, especially for peaceful protesting.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to the subject of your book, 3 Lines and a Circle. The 3 lines that we're talking about are the peace symbol that has become, just a part of our culture. And I think people look at it, and hopefully a lot of people understand what it means, but I don't know. So tell us about the book and about this real important icon.
Sure. I can tell you that I walk through my neighborhood a lot, and we have an elementary school and a middle school and a high school in our neighborhood. And I pay attention to what kids write on the sidewalk with chalk. So I look at chalk drawings a lot. I was thinking about this morning, and there are 2 ubiquitous symbols that usually appear on these sidewalks. One is a heart. So I see lots of hearts, pink hearts, but I also see lots of peace symbols too. I don't see the power fist, and I don't see some of the other symbols that are pretty ubiquitous in our culture as well, but I do see those two symbols. And I really find myself thinking too, what is it that the peace symbol means to kids when they put it on the sidewalk? What does it mean when they put it on their backpacks, on their clothes, and when they wear it on bracelets and so forth? And I thought that I would take a book and invite kids to go a little deeper into some of the various meanings of this symbol. So 3 lines in a circle is really an invitation to kids to think a bit more deeply about the symbol and what it means in wider culture and what it can mean for them as well. Now, symbols are really complicated. No matter how simple they appear, they're complicated in the sense that they have a lot of meanings associated with them. And those meanings also change through the years. And so in a really simple way, 3 lines in a circle tends to the complexity of the symbol.
Mm. We've talked on the show a lot about the fact that it's important for families to talk to their kids about media and help them become media literate. And the fact that kids are exposed to literally thousands of media messages a day. And this is one of those messages that kids, as you said, that kids use and that they're exposed to a whole lot. And so it is important for us to talk to our kids and to get them to think. I'm imagining there are a lot of kids out there that wear the peace symbol and draw it, and to them it's just cool. It's fashion, as opposed to really deep down thinking about what they're saying and what they're endorsing and with its use.
Yeah, I often wonder what it means to kids. And sometimes I think, okay, so it's a cool symbol, as you said, and it's pervasive and it's fun to wear and it's really easy to draw, right? And so I think that's partly why it's so popular. But I also think that maybe they think it means don't fight. So that's a really simple message that comes across, I think, on playgrounds especially. That's something that we learned from our teachers and our superintendents and our principals, don't fight. And so maybe the peace symbol might mean that for kids. But they can also see that sign virtually everywhere in culture. This sign is so popular. And your point about fashion is really important because a lot of signs in our lives don't make it to fashion. And the creator of the symbol, Gerald Holton, and I hope we can talk a little bit about him later on. The creator of the symbol decided not to copyright the symbol. And the people who first used the symbol decided not to copyright the symbol. And so that allows everybody to use it freely. And fashion designers early on, shortly after the creation of the symbol, realized that this was a really marketable symbol, and it was. And that's, I think, partly why it ended up in fashion, and partly because it's, again, such a simple design. But yes, I think the basic message in some of the sidewalk drawings I see is probably don't fight, but also, hey, this is a cool symbol. So it is important to sit down with our kids and to invite them into a deeper discussion about the various meanings of not only the peace symbol, but all the symbols in our lives. You know, it's interesting to me, too, that I don't see the flag a whole lot on sidewalks when I look at chalk drawings, because that's another symbol that's really pervasive in kids' lives. But the simplicity of the peace symbol, I think, is an invitation to kids to draw it more than the complexity of the American flag.
So why don't we talk about the creator of the peace symbol and his intention when he created it?
So the creator is Gerald Holtom. He was a graphic designer in London in the 1950s and forward. He was fervently committed to fighting nuclear arms and nuclear weapons. And he believed that the bubbling movement in the anti-nuclear war campaign needed a symbol. And he believed that, I think, partly because of his own background. He was a graphic designer, and he knew the importance of symbols. Why are symbols important? Well, they really can gather a community around a singular message. And that's, I think, what Holtom was after. He wanted to unify people around an important message. And so he decided to go to a committee at the time, and this was a committee devoted to creating an anti-nuclear weapons march, an anti-nuclear war march. This was in 1958, so this is pretty early on, right? And he took the design out of his portfolio. He showed it to the committee. And, you know, the committee wasn't quite sure about the design. The design, if you look at it, is not compelling. And you can imagine it wasn't that compelling at that time because nobody knew what that symbol stood for. It would be compelling now, but at that point, nobody knew. And Holtom convinced the committee that they should use this 3 lines in a circle as the symbol for the march. And the committee backed that idea. And so 7 weeks before the march, Holtom really converted his art studio into a studio devoted to creating the peace symbol on banners and what he called lollipops, which were round circles. And these banners and lollipops appeared for the first time in public in 1958 at this march from London to a munitions factory in Aldermaston, a research center for nuclear armaments. It's a beautiful story, partly because that symbol was born in uncertainty, and because it also created some conflict early on, in the sense that there were people who thought that the symbol didn't mean anything and it would be silly to use it. And Holtom kept his back straight, his chin forward, and went forward with the symbol. And sure enough, here we are today, and it's everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting. You know, I don't think people realize that back at that time, the decade between 58 and 69, 68, there was a real fear of nuclear war. I mean, that was something that was on the minds of everyone. Kids in schools were doing drills to hide under the desk in case of a nuclear attack. Seems kind of silly right now because I don't think those desks would have done much. So it's certainly this symbol of peace was born in a time where lots of people were fearful that the we were minutes away from the end of the world.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Jed. This symbol was born in a culture of fear and distrust, thinking that the world might go up in flames at any minute because of the presence of these overwhelmingly powerful weapons. And, when I was writing the book and even in this conversation now, I'm thinking, okay, so why don't we protest nuclear weapons that much anymore? They're more powerful than ever, right? They're not as pervasive as they used to be, but they're more powerful than ever. So why is it that people in the 1950s and the 1960s, up into the 1980s, by the way, society and culture was, at least the dissidents in society and culture, were pretty committed to anti-nuclear weapons and anti-nuclear war campaigns. I don't know why it is that we don't protest them as much anymore, but Holtom was fervently committed to the cause. I think he had little kids at the time, and I'm sure that he saw the fear on their faces when talking about this. And he gave some order to the campaign. He gave some life to the campaign as well. And those are important issues. It's important for campaigns, protest campaigns, to have order, I think, and not get lost in chaos. So people ordered themselves and unified themselves around this very simple symbol.
One of the things that I remember hearing about the peace sign when I was younger was that it was an anti-Christian sign, that it was an upside down and broken cross, and that it was it created intentionally to be an anti-Christian sign. It's sounding like that's the farthest thing from the truth, from what you're saying.
Yes. Nothing could be farther from the truth than that. Holtom initially wanted to use the cross symbol as part of his symbol. He actually wanted to use the cross as the main symbol in the anti-nuclear campaign. And he ran it by some ministers in the London area and some religious leaders more generally. And everybody, for whatever reason, was opposed to using the sign in the campaign, which strikes me as odd when we think that for Christians, Jesus is called the Prince of Peace and taught his followers to turn the other cheek and said that blessed are the peacemakers and so forth. So I find the story very odd that every minister to the T was opposed to using the cross in this peaceful campaign. So he went back to the drawing board, and he was still inspired by the cross, and I think initially did see the peace symbol as a cross in despair, with the two lines indicating despair. And eventually, this is really interesting too, Jed, eventually Holtom wanted the symbol to appear on his gravestone, but in an inverted fashion, so that the two lines that pointed down would be pointing up as a symbol of ultimate hope. His tombstone today has the traditional peace symbol on it. There's not an inverted symbol, but it's fascinating to me to think about the inversion of that symbol to give a sign of hope. The other thing I want to point out here is that the London to Aldermaston campaign started on Good Friday, which for Christians is a huge symbol in the sense that it points to sacrificing one's life for a better cause, for a really good cause. And Holtom decided that he would paint the banners black, which is a key color for Good Friday, symbolic of death and crucifixion, and that the lollipops would be black as well. But the campaign was also designed to end near Easter, on Easter. And so in Holtom's mind, and this is what happened, the banner turned from black to green. and the lollipop signs turned from black to green. And green, as we know, is a verdant color, full of life, full of new life and resurrection. And so in Holtom's mind, the peace symbol itself and the movement from black to green really symbolized all that Christianity was about. Mm-hmm. So to think of the peace symbol as anti-Christian, I think, really flies in the face of that history. That's an anti-historical claim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just, I was younger at that time, and we didn't, at least I wasn't aware of any of this history. It just, kind of came into my consciousness as just this thing, and, a lot of the older people that were around me just, kind of referred to it as a hippie symbol, and thereby able to ignore it or just kind of push it aside as being frivolous.
Yes, I think that people who used the peace symbol and who wore the peace symbol, sometimes they wore the peace symbol on their butt, on denim jeans, were considered to be radicals opposed to the status quo that many adults in our life were committed to. In the United States, the peace symbol really became prevalent from 1965 on during the anti-Vietnam War campaign. And at that point, a lot of the adults were committed to the Vietnam War as a just war. They considered it a just cause because it fought godless communism. And so to fight godless communism is really to join the to oppose a war that was fighting godless communism is really to join the godless cause in many people's minds at that point. And I think that's why you probably heard what you heard. My introduction to the Peace War movement is interesting because I went to a carnival near my hometown, Lewistown, Pennsylvania. This carnival was held in a small town called McClure, which was a very conservative area. But when the people there were handing out bean soup, I saw this poster in the background, and the poster was a poster of a breast, and superimposed on the poster was these words that read, "Make love, not war." And I was intrigued because of the breast. So I was immediately captured by the movement because of that. Not because of the symbol, but because of that. And what's interesting to me about that is that poster was at an event that sponsored veterans in the area. And many veterans at that time were also committed to the anti-war cause. So we don't want to say that the anti-war cause was just full of radicals, but mm-hmm. the radicals definitely did lead the charge.
Yeah. I'm really curious, what led you to be so interested and fascinated by what kids write on the sidewalk in chalk?
Part of it is because I'm not an artist, and I've always longed to be able to draw well. And I love to look at pictures that I can't draw. I love to look at art that I can't draw. The illustrator for the book, Carlos Velez, has just done a wonderful job illustrating the book, and I could never even come close to drawing those pictures. So I've always been attracted to art, I think, for that reason. It's a longing, a desire that I've had. I've not been able to, I can tap into that desire and appreciate art. I've not been able to tap into any ability that might be there. If there is an ability there, it's really, really, really deep. My father's a wonderful drawer, a wonderful artist, a very informal, folksy artist, but an artist nonetheless. And so I've had that as part of my background, as part of my personality. But I love the joy that kids bring to sitting down at a sidewalk and drawing. How many adults do we see without kids who sit down and draw on a sidewalk? I don't think I've ever seen an adult drawing on a sidewalk. So I love the joy of that activity, and I'm drawn to that I'm drawn to the freedom and joy of it. I think partly because I can have a rigid personality, and partly because I suffer from depression and I'm attracted to activities that are full of joy that I don't always have the ability to express. So I think that's part of it. I'm also attracted to the simplicity of the drawings. I just love the simplicity of the peace symbol that they draw. It's just 3 lines in a circle. And it's an invitation to me to draw as well. And while I can't draw, I do find myself doodling peace symbols when I'm sitting down to write.
It's interesting. We've mentioned a number of times through our conversation how simple this sign is. And when you think about the symbols in our lives that are so prevalent, and the heart that you mentioned earlier on, the kids draw, it's just one continuous shape. The peace sign, 3 lines in a circle. The smiley face, 2 dots in a half circle.
Yeah. Really
they're so simple, but they're everywhere, and they've endured for decades, if not. I have no idea how long kids have been writing the heart symbol, but they're really powerful. What do you think that we should learn from that, from how simple these symbols are, but how powerful they are?
Well, I think Holtzim was partly attracted to the symbol that he created because he realized it would be easily duplicated. And that's important when one sits down to create a symbol, and I've tried to do that as well, to come up with something that would be easy for people to duplicate in their everyday lives. So I think that he had that in mind, and I'm very grateful for that because I too can draw the peace symbol. And so one doesn't always need to be complex to communicate complex ideas, and I hope that people will remember that. I think sometimes when we deal in abstract ideas, and peace can be an abstract idea at times, we think we need to express the abstract idea in abstract terms, in complex terms, and we have the sense sometimes that we can't express really abstract ideas unless we're really thick and complex in our descriptions. And that's just simply not the case. I think some of the most profound ideas are found in simple designs and simple words and simple sentences. In the text that I used for the book, I used a really simple free verse. And I chose that in part to reflect the simplicity of the design. And sometimes, even now, I look back on the text that I wrote and I think, well, maybe I should have told Jerry's story in a thicker version, in a more narrative fashion, in a more complex way. And perhaps that would be more attractive to kids. And then at other times I think, I'm really glad that I stuck with the simple free verse because it's authentic to the symbol itself. So I go back and forth, and I struggle with these issues of complexity and simplicity and profundity in my own mind. But I'm glad that I did what I did.
Yeah. Well, when I think about the message that has driven every culture, every religion that we're aware of, treat others the way that you want to be treated. It's such a simple, straightforward lesson and message. And it seems, like after that message was delivered to whatever culture heard it by whoever delivered it, the culture then spent a lot of time, retelling that message with a lot more words and a lot more complexity. If we stick with the original, treat others the way you want to be treated, it's so you don't need any additional commentary. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of words sometimes. I can walk down my sidewalk here throughout my neighborhood and see signs that read, "Be kind."
Mm-hmm.
And that can transform my day, especially if I've not been kind to somebody earlier in the day, or I'm stewing about somebody I don't want to be kind to. That the simplicity of that message can really transform my life. And that's the beauty of simple messages, simple words, and simple symbols like the peace symbol.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing that families are going to love Three Lines in a Circle, and that it's going to inspire some really profound and hopefully fun conversations on the couch or around the dinner table. And I'm thinking that this is one of those picture books that can resonate with older kids too. It's not necessarily a message and for our babies. It's I think something that can really spur a lot of meaningful thought amongst people of all ages. Was that something that you were intending?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, if you're an older kid out there or if you're an adult, I want to encourage you to go to the back of the book where I write about the history and the origin of the peace symbol and its evolution. And if you do that, and then you start at the beginning of the book, you'll be able to see that the illustrator included all types of hints about the origin of the peace symbol and its evolution in the illustrations that he drew. So I hope that older kids and adults will be able to sit down with the younger children or by themselves and look at those pictures really deeply, because you can find some incredibly complex meanings just in the pictures as well. But yes, that's definitely what I intended.
Awesome. Hey, Michael, where can folks go to find out a little bit more about Three Lines in a Circle and also to find out more about you?
You can go to all major booksellers online. I encourage you to go to independent booksellers, including my own, Flyaway Books. You can find out more about me online. Just type in Michael G. Long into your search engine, and you'll see that I've written about civil rights, religion, politics, nonviolent protest, peaceful protest in U.S. history, LGBTQ rights, and everything that's a little bit on the edge in our everyday lives.
Well, I'm really excited. I really want to encourage everybody to check out Three Lines in a Circle. And like Michael said, support your local indie bookstores. Give them a call. Say, do you have Three Lines in a Circle by Michael G. Long? No. Could you order it for me, please? And it will be there in just a couple of days. We've had a great time speaking about Three Lines in a Circle, brand new picture book from our guest, Michael G. Long. Hey, Michael, thanks for spending this time with us.
Judd, peace to you and peace to everybody listening.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Courtney Dunlap. She'll be here to celebrate forgiveness, a coloring journal supporting your journey to freedom. That's the next episode of the show. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy. It gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your book, and it doesn't cost a thing. No need to pay anybody to facilitate your appearance. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, scroll on down to be a guest. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Michael J. Long. Be sure to check out Three Lines in a Circle. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.